Good morning. As Howard said, I'm honored to be here. I'm Haley Carlson with the Tribune Events Group, and I've been asked to speak about how I made my in-house events department indispensable. What's important to point out is that they were actually always indispensable. It's just that within a huge multimedia company, they really didn't have a chance to shine and to prove the value of what we were bringing to the table and how important events and sponsorships are to the marketing mix and to advertising within brands and our clients. I was actually going to ask, by a show of hands, how many people were in-house and how many people were on the agency side, but Howard and Chad actually covered that in the beginning. I was really inspired to see that it was a really nice mix. I've been to a lot of these conferences over the last several years, and I feel like it's tend to have skewed more on the vendor side and either one direction or another. So it's really nice that there is a good mix of both sides here, agency and in-house. So even though I'm going to cover how I tackled the in-house approach, I want you to know that I do feel strongly that it can be used towards either side, whether you're on the agency or in-house. The measure for success that I found to be really helpful is that it came down to driving revenue, proving value, and demonstrating relevancy. I started in this industry over 16 years ago when it really wasn't yet a fully established industry. Conferences like this did not exist, at least to the extent that they do today. What we did was considered party planning, and oftentimes the feedback that I got was, "Oh, what you do for a living is really fun," and it was, but it was also, it was also a lot of work, and it was far less strategic than it is today. I remember back in 2000 and 2001 when I was working in-house for GoldmanSachs.com. The dot-com era was starting to tank, and the economy was headed south. Events in general, and especially event departments, were the first areas to be cut and eliminated. Then again, in 2008, as Howard mentioned, I had just moved back to Chicago, and we started to see the same trends repeat themselves with the start of the recession. I had just moved my family back to Chicago, as I mentioned, and to take the position in-house with the Tribune. And I was quickly faced with a decision. Either figure out a way to demonstrate and prove why events are so relevant and so critical to a company's landscape, or sit back and wait for the inevitable to happen. Just like the economy, the pressure for our company was incredibly heightened, and everything became about generating revenue and the bottom line. Before I go further, I'll grab the clicker here. Before I go further, though, I think it's important to learn a little bit, hear a little bit more about the Tribune Company. Tribune was founded in 1847. It's one of the country's leading multimedia companies. We reach more than 80% of the US households through publishing, digital, television, and radio broadcasting. Operations are concentrated in the nation's major markets, so here in New York, LA, and Chicago. Our broadcast group operates over 24 television stations and 15 publications, both print and online, nationwide. So as you can see, the core business is media. Event marketing is a very small piece of our business, which made it even more challenging to prove my team's value and transform. When I started with the Tribune, the events team was viewed internally as a cost center and a support function. Events and promotions were given to our clients as value added and not sold or valued individually. The culture was very reactionary, and it was not structured to be proactive. Faced with the challenges that we were, I identified 3 key goals that I felt were critical in helping to turn things around. 1, transform the team from being perceived, as I had mentioned, as value added and support into revenue driving. 2, develop methods to restructure our team into a standalone business unit by bringing forth both revenue generating and cost cutting measures. 3, work to keep all of our brands relevant in the event space. This was especially important for a much older, established traditional media company, which was starting to really struggle in the digital age. So after establishing these goals, as you can see on the slide, I decided to take an agency-minded approach because that was more of what I was familiar with in the recent years. After much planning and collaboration, we launched a new brand under the Tribune Media Group umbrella called the Tribune Events Group. I was able to identify and tap into some key revenue areas that we had not yet explored. We developed events around ticket sales, concessions with revenue shares in book vendors, parking, really across the board, any event that we could kind of flip on its head and create new revenue generating ways, we did that. One key category that stuck out as the biggest revenue driver was sponsorship sales. The sponsorships industry is a multi-million-dollar industry. It generates over $750 million in the Chicago market alone. And it wasn't one that we were currently getting a piece of. Over the course of the last 4 years, we've been able to raise our pure event revenue goal to over $2 million by tapping into these buckets of money. I also worked to centralize all of our B2C brands under one umbrella, into one team. This helped us to reduce our cost savings and to really leverage our capabilities and strengths. Finally, I reworked my entire team's job functions to better match skill sets, talents, and interests. Together, we then developed systems and procedures in order to plan, track, and better measure our success. Let me tell you, by developing these P&Ls and the revenue tracking, our finance department was really, really happy, and it really kind of went a long way in order to prove how we measure ourselves and what we can bring to the table. We identified revenue and expense goals so that the entire team felt invested and that they had some skin in the game. We've been able to double the event revenue that's tied to advertising. In 2008, we were credited for $1.5 million in revenue, and this year alone will be just over $3 million. Our pure event revenue goal, as I had mentioned before, which is actually our core area of focus because it's incremental revenue to the company, it was literally zero in 2008, and this year we're over $2 million. And finally, I implemented the typical sponsorship decks, timelines, production documents, marketing materials, and wrap decks to bring consistency to both our internal and external clients. All right, let's see if this works. This is our sizzle reel. Were actually a little out of order too. So what I wanted to say was that we also went to to further establish ourselves, we created our own media kits in order to centralize our calendars, all of our sales sheets, so that it was really cohesive for both our internal and external sales efforts. And then we created the sizzle reel that you just saw. So as you can see from the sizzle reel, we produce a wider range of events. We produce events for the Chicago Tribune, for Red Eye, which is a much younger urban demographic, more entertainment, edgier-based brand in Chicago. Chicago Magazine, which is a bit more affluent, higher household incomes, more fashion shows, those types of events. We produce over 300 events a year, which is a lot. What makes us unique is that we have the marketing and advertising, as you can see from this slide here, through on-air, guerrilla marketing, digital, out-of-home, that really helps us reach all different touch points and mediums for both our brands and for our clients and advertisers. I don't know about you guys, but I did not get into the events industry to do more math and accounting and P&Ls and revenue projections, but I really find it to be interesting and a fascinating time in our industry as we continue to grow. I think this business approach is really critical to helping us continue to get to the next level. I'm constantly hearing from some of our top clients like Coca-Cola, Nike, AT&T, Anheuser-Busch, Macy's, that events is really a part of their marketing mix and their advertising mix now, whereas before it was always viewed separately and as a standalone. Big brands are really seeing that now more than ever, I was talking to Bill earlier about this, that now more than ever in this digital age, that face-to-face interaction with consumers is so critical and so important to keeping messages out there and that connection and that live touch point. So I'm excited and I'm inspired by where we're at in our industry and where it's grown to. And I know that what we bring to the table is invaluable, and I hope you guys do too. Thank you.
Don't leave yet.
Okay.
One of the things I want to make sure that you share with people is a couple of things. You mentioned taking on sponsorships, which brings you more towards the revenue side of your company. You saw, and this is a reel about an event venue. So this was your team's idea to basically take a parking lot at a printing facility you had, so which was basically a company asset that was not being used. And you put a whole business plan together to make it into, a venue that could be rented out. You saw the tents going up.
Right.
So all of a sudden now your team, owns this revenue-generating, space.
Right.
And there was one other example. These are all things that make the company look a little bit differently at your team. You also changed the name of the biggest event you did. Was the Printers Row. Tell me what the name was and what you changed it to and why.
When I started with the company, it was called the Printers Row Book Fair, and it's actually one of the largest events in Chicago that kicks off Chicago's festival season, which is a really a big time in that market. Printers Row Book Fair, it just doesn't have any sizzle to it. It doesn't have any pizzazz, and I was shocked, honestly, the first year that I produced that, how many people attend that event, how much coverage it receives, both in that market but nationally. We fly in over 200 top authors. We have over 250 new, used, and antiquarian booksellers. And over the course of the two-day weekend, we get, no joke, 150,000 people that come to that event. And those are not inflated numbers, which I know that we like to do. But, and so, I just really saw an opportunity to take it to the next level, rebrand it. So we changed the name to the Printers Row Lit Fest. And we played off the word lit a lot, get lit, and made it more attractive for sponsors to buy into the event. And from an event that was losing money, a significant amount of money when I came in, to this past June, it brought in over $1.2 million in revenue through sponsorships and all of the other ancillary ways that we were tapping into. So.
And I want to point that out because it's not like you say, let's change the name of this really old established
no.
event, and everybody just says, okay, great, and applauds.
Yeah, I caught
right?
a lot of heat
you
for
caught
it.
a lot, right? And you felt you had a case
Right.
for making it better, and you took on the potential risk of pushing that through. I mean, just very quickly, was that a nightmare of a process, or in the end, or it sounds like you're glad you did it?
It was. It's funny. I lived and worked in New York for over 11 years with Howard, and I think Deborah Morris is here too. But New York is tough, but Chicago, dealing with politics and the city, is 10 times worse. And so it wasn't even my company that gave me a hard time. It was the city, and what are you doing changing this beloved event? And they didn't want us to be making money, and the city didn't, that is. And so we really had to win over the aldermen in that district, and even the mayor's office. And so it took a lot of work and a couple of years to do so, but we're finally there.
Yeah,
So.
and I think those are all really good examples of the CFOs in the company and the decision makers really viewing you you mentioned having skin in the game, but they view you not as somebody that just blindly executes what comes down the pipe, that you really take a business view of things, and hey, if we can rebrand this, it's going to be a little bit of work to get that pushed through, but that's what's best for the business. And I think that mindset, I'm assuming that serves you well.
Yep, definitely.
Cool.
Definitely. It's helped.
All right. Thanks so much, Haley.
Thank you.